is Newsroom. Hello and welcome from Johannesburg here in South Africa. I'm Evan Hansen. This show is always live and is broadcast from our studios here in Auckland Park. Don't forget we're also streaming live on YouTube right now, and the whole show is always available on demand on our YouTube channel. Now, an investigation is being launched into the practices of some churches here in South Africa. We ask you the question today: should all churches in South Africa be investigated and regulated? At SABC Newsroom, that's where you can answer that question. We'll put up your responses a little bit later, or tomorrow even if they're really good. Now, 148 farm attacks in South Africa this year alone has the South African Human Rights Commission concerned. We also look at the dire situation at the Aquarius mine at Kroondal, where starvation is a daily threat. We close with a look at pension funds in South Africa that still sit with billions in unclaimed benefits. But first, let's get the day's news from Anindoma.
Good morning, I'm Anindoma. Let's take a look at the stories making headlines today. Parliament's Oversight Committee on Police says the killing of officers has reached intolerable proportions. The committee will discuss the SAPS strategy on preventing police killings this week. Gauteng Community Safety MEC Sizakele Nkosi Malobane has also called on an urgent meeting with officers for this afternoon. Meanwhile, another suspect will appear in court today following a major breakthrough in the recent spate of police killings in Gauteng. Trade and political relations between South Africa and Japan are in the spotlight today. This as officials from the two countries will meet in Tokyo. Deputy President Cyril Ramaphosa will be leading a delegation of ministers and business people. The aim of the visit is to enhance existing trade and political relations between the two countries.
We're going to be very busy in the next few days promoting South Africa and making sure that we promote trade and investment to come to South Africa.
The rand has tumbled the most since 2011 this morning. This as the rand hit 14 rand to the dollar before recovering slightly to just more than 13 rand 30 a dollar. The rand plunged to a 14-year low last week over concerns that commodity prices will fall even further as China's economy slows. Public Protector Thuli Madonsela is set to release her findings on the Passenger Rail Agency of South Africa today. Prasa has been facing many serious challenges, including allegations of corruption and mismanagement. The CEO, Lucky Montana, was fired last month. This followed a 3.5 billion rand tender for new diesel locomotives that allegedly did not conform to South Africa's rail line standards. In Berlin, German Chancellor Angela Merkel and French President François Hollande will hold talks today on Europe's biggest migrant crisis in 50 years. Over 100,000 migrants entered the EU last month. The head of the UN has arrived in Nigeria to mark Boko Haram's deadly 2011 attack on the global body. Today, Ban Ki-moon will lay a wreath to commemorate the 4th anniversary of the car bombing at United Nations House that left 21 dead. Combating violent extremism is also expected to be high on the agenda. And in sport, Usain Bolt has described his World 100-meter victory over controversial rival Justin Gatlin as the hardest of his career. Bolt scorched home in 9.79 seconds at the final of the World Athletic Championships in China, beating off the American by just 1/100 of a second. Well, remember, you can find all of those stories on our Newsroom Facebook page. Just search for SABC Newsroom. Of course, you can also follow us on Twitter at SABC Newsroom. Evan, over to you.
Thank you, Anin. Now, over the years, South Africa has become a fertile ground for independent, charismatic churches promising instant wealth and, in some cases, healing using bizarre methods. But that could be soon a thing of the past. Last week, the Commission for the Promotion and Protection of Cultural, Religious and Linguistic Communities announced that it will launch an investigation into some of these practices and the reasoning behind it. The Commission will also look at the commercialization of religion and what it called the abuse and exploitation of people's belief. In light of recent events, there's been growing concerns about the lack of accountability, with many calling for these types of churches to now be regulated. Now, from the Cultural, Religious and Linguistic Commission. We are joined this morning by the Deputy Chairperson, Professor David Mosoma. Very good morning to you, Professor. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning to you.
Interesting, the developments now. Just tell us what you are thinking and why you've decided to make this call.
We have decided to make this call because of so many complaints that we have received from groups, individuals in society. This has been going on for some time, but until we face this barrage of concerns, we felt as part of our mandate, which is to really promote and protect the rights of religious, cultural and linguistic communities, it is important to identify what are the things, the values that we need to protect and promote.
Yeah.
So it's not a wholesale thing. So as part of that mandate and also commensurate with the problems that we receive from communities, we decided it is important to institute an investigation which will issue out a new understanding of these phenomena. For instance, the commercialization of religion. It has become a sore point because many in the name of religion actually sell profanalias, sometimes water,
honey,
whatever the case may be, and say, if you take this, it will heal you. Sometimes they even encourage people to leave medication, like HIV patients, to leave medication and say, if you drink this water, you know, HIV and AIDS will disappear. So we believe that these are, in essence, are not assisting in national building and social cohesion, which is the mandate which we are embarked on. So we want to look at this particular phenomenon. What are the causes of this phenomenon? Identify those causes. Why is it that our people, societal thinking our people, are so gullible and vulnerable in buying into these schemes, these shoddy schemes? And we want also to make sure that some of these funding coming from these institutions, where do they go to? Are they taxable? Are they used to assist society, and so forth and so forth? Just yesterday in the Sunday papers, a story of a pastor who said, listen, if you give 1,000 rand, you know, I will be able to consult you. Until you put that, I can't consult with you. But if you put 400,000 rand, you know, I'll do A, B, C, D. But in some instances, they actually say, once you have paid the money and nothing has happened, you go back to them and say, no, it's because you have not done it well. Go and do it again. But nothing happens.
It's quite a wide question, the question of finance within the church. How do you intend to look at it, and will you include all churches in it, or is it only the sort of, call it New World charismatic churches that you're looking at?
It's a comprehensive study. We are not excluding anyone. Anybody should be in the net. Because this, the Bureau for Market Research at the University of South Africa, it's a very credible institution, and it has got the footprint in the whole South Africa. So they will be able to sample and be able to understand precisely what it is that we want, because we have set up a concept paper which identifies areas of focus, so that they'll be looking at those areas of focus. And we hope that issues of funding is very critical. Some of the funding may be used or channeled to, you know, fuel or even assist terrorism in some respect. So we want to find out what is actually happening. Why all of a sudden today you are poor, tomorrow you are rich? Where do you get this money? So we want accountability. Is there a system of governance in your churches, in your traditional independence environment? Because we're not only looking at churches, it's across the board. Our mandate is across the board. Rastafarians, Islamic, Jewish, everybody. We look into this particular phenomenon called religion, how it functions.
I want to take you to a concerning matter that's arisen now in recent times also. We see the levels of what we would call witchcraft, and over the weekend we've had a young albino woman in KwaZulu-Natal that was murdered and cut up for muti purposes and so forth. Are you going to look at these kinds of practice under the guise of church as well?
We are going to look at those under the guise of traditional healing medicine, because these also are the people that we look after as part of the commission. And that concern is very critical, because if you kill somebody and skin the person and use these parts for medicine, what does it mean? In other words, you are making money.
Yeah.
You are commercializing also.
Yeah.
So we want to look at this. What is the phenomena? Because our understanding of the African medicine is that you use medicine for healing,
Yes.
assisting people, not to kill people.
Yes.
Because if you kill, you then undermine the very value of that medicine that you use. So there's a contradiction in terms there.
Do you think, let me restart that again, there'll always be a place for the church in society because it is the preferred way that we worship. But is it, in your view, is it time to review the role of the church in society and the way that it is applied today?
I don't think we are going to look at the role of the church and how it functions today. There's always a role. But the role is to promote values, values of life, values that are cohesive, values that promote synergy, promote peace, harmony, and friendship. That is the role of the church. Because the role of the church is to create a new community of people with a new understanding, with a new relationship. Those are the things that we want to see the church doing.
It's certainly a very big scope of work that you're looking at, and it might take you quite some time, I would think, to come up with a report. But when are you hopeful to have a report ready?
The report will be ready in April next year, almost 8 months. And once the report is ready, we'll share with the nation.
I hope that we'll be able to get the occasional update until that time, because this is a matter that affects so many South Africans, and it's something that we are all so very passionate about.
We'll try our utmost to do
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Professor David Masoma, who is from the Cultural, Religious and Linguistic Commission. We're talking about, well, the regulation of church business here in South Africa. Your views, you can send it to us, of course, at SABC Newsroom. Now, concerning for us South Africans, the rand hit 14 rand to the dollar earlier this morning before recovering slightly. It's now trading around 13 rand 30, 13 rand 35 to the dollar. The rand plunged to a 14-year low last week over concerns that commodity prices will fall even further as China's economy slows. The prospect of higher interest rates in the United States is also hurting the South African currency. The rand has dropped 14% this year alone. Very concerning for South Africans. Now let's take a look at what you say about this on social media. Of course, at SABC Newsroom is where we take your tweets. And Duduzi Siakamela says, in 2011 I had a heated debate about the future of the rand with a learned guy. Seems I was not far off that it will slump in the near future. Emma O'Brien says, interesting moves an hour into proper Asia trade. SA Rand falling to record low. Soybeans at a 6-year low. Topics nearing correction. In Casa Africa Business tweets, South Africa consumers are under increasing pressure from rising electricity prices, a weakening rand which also hurts retailers. Talking about business. Forex People says, ZAR weakness is coming directly from China, not that the US dollar is strong. Those are some of the views, very concerning. Broken through an unprecedented 14 rand to the dollar rate this morning. Now let's take a look at our picture of the day. Well, this one comes from Ulrich J. van Vieren, and it comes out of Malawi. It's captioned, Malawi Chief Nkosi Kachindamoto has annulled 300+ child marriages in a district and sent them back to school. Very, very interesting story. Now, let's take a look at the front pages from around the globe. We start in the United Kingdom. The Telegraph reports the deaths of at least 11 people in the worst airshow disaster in a generation are likely to mean safety rules are rewritten after it emerged that dozens more narrowly avoided being killed. Moving to the USA Today reports that US airstrikes aimed at Iran's nuclear facilities would likely set back the regime's quest for a weapon by 1 or 2 years and require waves of attacks spearheaded by the ultra-heavy conventional bomb known as the Massive Ordnance Penetrator. Finally, in Spain, El Mundo there says Usain Bolt produced perhaps his greatest performance of all as he put a troubled build-up behind him to beat two-time doper and clear favourite Justin Gatlin to retain his World 100-metre title by the smallest of margins. Now let's take a look at what's happening in the courts today. We start in Johannesburg, where the High Court is expected to begin handing down judgment in the drug dealing and attempted murder case against Czech fugitive Radovan Krejcir. That happens today. Krejcir and 5 others, including 3 former Hawks officers, pleaded not guilty to the charges. We stay in Johannesburg. The High Court will hear the application by the Treatment Action Campaign and Sonke Gender Justice for them to intervene in a possible class action suit against South African gold mines. Thousands of current and former gold miners allegedly contracted silicosis and tuberculosis. Also in Johannesburg, a psychologist is expected to testify in the trial of murder-accused DJ Donald Sebolei in the High Court sitting in Palm Reach. Sebolei is accused of killing his girlfriend. After his cross-examination, he claimed that her death was not his fault. Interesting. For those in the courts today, time for us to take a short break. This is Newsroom here on SABC News.
This week we are taking you around the continent, telling you stories about what makes Africa, Africa.
We now head to the Kenyan coast, where we meet a man using needles to fight a growing drug culture.
A recent study revealed that there are 850 drug addicts in Diani alone, with over 220 using injectable drugs such as heroin.
In my community, I've seen a lot of these people suffer.
The Journal, every Saturday at 1:30 on SABC News.
Welcome back. The South African Human Rights Commission has expressed concern on the escalating attacks on farmers across the country. In the first 8 months of this year alone, the Commission recorded 148 attacks on farms, resulting in the death of 33 farmers. The human rights body released the Commission's report last week on safety and security challenges in farming communities. The farming communities are normally vulnerable to violence due to their isolation and lack of access to effective and timely service delivery. The SAHRC conducted hearings into farm attacks between September and October of last year. Farm owners, farm workers, farming representative bodies, political parties, the SAPS, government, unions and others were given the opportunity to testify. Now, a commissioner from the SAHRC responsible for accessing justice and housing, Mr. Mohammed Amir Mia, joins us in the studio this morning. He's also co-compiler of this report. Very good morning to you, sir. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning to you, Evan, and to your listeners. Thank you for inviting us over here to interrogate this report and share our experiences of this report.
It's certainly a very concerning report. If one looks at the numbers, just give us the context of what you think were the most important things that you found.
I think we must contextualize this entire report within two things: the right to life and also the right to food security. Now, we are concerned, and like you correctly mentioned, that it is frightening and alarming that there are so many deaths in the rural communities.
Yeah.
We then found in this report that it's not racially motivated, but it's a concern because these are vulnerable communities that are far away, they spread all over the country, that kind of thing. What we did with this report is we measured this report against the 2003 and 2008 report.
Yeah.
Now, the 2003 and 2008 report
were basically talking to these very same issues, but in a very broad context. We decided that, you know, it can't be just another report that has to be filed in Parliament for the sake of malicious compliance. But what we did was we concretized this report into 13 recommendations. And we actually said that this report, whilst we're going to file it in Parliament as well as part of our mandate and our duties, but we're also going to monitor the situation. And we call on all the different stakeholders, whether it was Department of Justice, you know, the Rural Safety and Network, Department of Agriculture, and we think all role players have a role to play in this matter, because fundamental to these issues is the issue of food security, and the farmers play a great role in that context.
I want to take you back to the first point that you made, that this is not racially motivated, is what you say. Now, in the South African context, that is a very big statement, because, as you understand, this is an issue that has been racialized throughout social media, throughout most of the discussion that we have. Unequivocally, what is the main reason that you see behind this? And what do you suggest is the way for us to untangle the race elements that have been brought into this?
Well, first of all, let us recognize that there are not only white farmers involved here, there are black farmers. I mean, the black farming community at the moment, there's a representation of 40,000 farmers that basically made submissions to our hearings. Now that is a big constituency per se. We are saying that fundamental to this whole thing, in untangling the process, is the commercial farmers are a threat. That's the reality. Now the question is, how do we provide a safety net around those commercial farmers so that, you know, the food security does not become compromised?
The bottom line that you're saying then is that it is a question of being easy targets, as we see in every other spheres of our society. The soft underbelly of our society is being targeted by criminals in general.
I agree with you on that statement. But what I'm saying to you, you know, what we at the Human Rights Commission have done is we've also done some background homework. We have signed an MOU with the Commission of Police. And through that MOU, we are going to strengthen the ties. We are going to strengthen the ties between the various stakeholders. And we're going to concretize solutions so that we can provide the safety and security that is necessary for these communities out here.
What are some of the solutions that you're looking at, and how does, when we talk about food security, how do you secure that?
First of all, you need to give people peace of mind, right? That they're working in an environment and they're working in a safe environment. Secondly, what we are saying to you, to the listeners out there, is that when we're talking about farming, the farming community, we're looking at the vulnerability of the farm workers as well. And we are saying that a healthy building relationship between the farmer and the farm worker is also very important in this. Recently, as you have seen, in the Western Cape, in the Durance area, as well as Stellenbosch, where we just won a big case, you know, the garnishee orders in favor of the farm workers, it was as a result of an intervention of farmers that came on board. So when that relationship is healthy, okay, that is the basis to start off with, to develop a trust relationship. And as a result, we are saying to people that then we need to, you know, concretize those steps in relation to forging stronger links with the community police forums, the South African police services as such per se.
There's no magic bullet or magic pill that's going to cause us to turn around, but you're confident that with consultation and with closing the gaps, the communication gaps between farmers, farm workers and all stakeholders, the problem is not an insurmountable one.
No, absolutely. We just got to work through this. We've got to chip at a mountain and we'll find our solutions. You know, we just got to give it that time to do so. But we are saying this report is different from the previous two reports, because in this report we are basically saying we are filing, but we're going to do monitoring and evaluation. We've got measurable objectives and key performance indicators that will work towards the solutions that we're envisaging.
Well, I thank you for joining us today. It's a very interesting report, and it's one of the key questions that South Africa has to come up with an answer with, I suppose.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Fully agree. Thank you.
Thank you
very
for
much.
joining us. That is, the Commissioner from the South African Human Rights Commissioner, responsible for, or co-compiler of this report on farm killings and farm attacks here in South Africa. Mohammed Amir Mia joining us this morning. Also today, the Public Protector, Thuli Madonsela, will release her report on an investigation into allegations of, maladministration at the Passenger Rail Agency of South Africa, Prasa. It's caused quite a stir, of course, on social media. Lots have been said. This is some of the views that we've picked off. Of course, at SABC Newsroom is where you can send us some of the other. Agent Provocateur says, Montana won't be feeling so lucky after the release of this report, this Prasa report. Well, interesting playing with words there, Lucky Montana. Of course, he's the CEO that's no longer with the body. Rukshana says, Public Protector Thuli Madonsela has the power to investigate, report and take remedial action. We citizens of South Africa support her fully. Hashtag Public Protector. The Purist of Natal says Thuli Madonsela must quickly deflate him when his missing tracks coming out. Lucky Montana is in a fighting mood. Don't forget, we'll be crossing to that report on this very channel at 11 a.m. So that's just about an hour and a half time. We'll be live with the Prasa report. Of course, South Africa's been on tenterhooks with the goings-on, trains derailing, locomotives. Is it the right locomotives? Are they the right size? All those kind of things. Well, you can get all the detail at 11 o'clock this morning on this very channel when that report into alleged maladministration at Prasa will be broadcast on this very channel. Now, in 2009, nearly 4,000 miners contracted to Murray and Roberts Cementation participated in an unprotected strike at Aquarius mine in Kurundal. Legal action was taken and 1,000 miners were released from their contracts. Several were arrested and charged with public violence. The miners were also blacklisted and have not been able to find work since, left without work, accommodation and their possessions after a police raid. These men have been left in a terrible situation, starving and trying to survive, some by eating cats, rats and wild vegetables. 158 struggling miners living in a hostel in the area are said to have died. The 45 remaining are desperate for help. Now joining us here in our studio this morning is Gift of the Givers social worker, Tapiwa Marima. Very good morning to you, sir. Thank you for joining us.
I'm fine, and you. Thanks, man, to have me on your show.
The numbers are simply dire. Please paint us the picture of this very, very sad story.
Truly, it's a very sad story. You know, when I was assigned by Dr. Mtias to go there and do a situation analysis, at first I thought, nah, it's just people talking about it. But when I went there and see the situation, it was very tragic. You could see the skins of the cats which were slaughtered, the jackals which were slaughtered in that area. And when you speak to those people, it's very sad. Some of them, they have never seen their families since 2009. It was very touching.
And tell us about the intervention from Gift of the Givers, the kind of support that you're giving. How is it affecting the lives of those that are left?
At Gift of the Givers, you know what we do. We respond to all the disasters that happens within the borders of South Africa and outside the borders of South Africa. I was the head of the team, actually went to Kurundal to provide food. Since these people have been feeding on cats, rats, jackals, wild vegetables. So we provided the food.
The number is very scary, and I want you to substantiate this number for me. 158 miners have died due to these circumstances. How did the situation get to this point before interventions were made?
I think it was a matter of that information was not given out. I think the media as well were not even actually covering out. For example, when I interviewed one of the miners, he mentioned that some of these guys actually died when they were involved in that strike, but nobody actually responded to this. But the matter stands to say that it's not about this whole intervention that we did as Gift of the Givers. It's not about pointing fingers, who's to blame, who is supposed to pay. It's not about that. It's about helping humanity to restore the dignity that they've lost, to restore their lives to be human beings as well.
What about What about illness and disease and medical treatment and so forth? Has any of these kind of help been extended to these miners?
When I went there, I found that most of these guys, they haven't been access to any medical facilities, medical services. One of the reasons being that they don't have documents, as it was mentioned. Some of these guys are from Mozambique, Malawi, Lesotho, Zimbabwe. They don't have access to hospitals because of not having IDs and proper documents. So what we did, we spoke to some of the guys that have been working on the ground to try to facilitate so that they can actually access the house facilities, and from Gate of the Givers as well. When I spoke to Dr. Mtias himself, he also mentioned that it's possible that we can also provide the services.
And what is the process of attending to these people now?
Currently, we're simply giving out every day, every time, as they are in need. We are giving out. But this system is not sustainable. We are trying to find a solution which is actually sustainable so these people can regain their strength as human beings.
Is it a question of work opportunities within that area, and if it can't be done, is it a question of them going back to their countries of origin, or is it a question of moving them elsewhere in South Africa?
I think the government is still working on that, and also our informers that have been actually working on the ground. They're trying to figure out the possible situation. But from our side, we also, as we provided food, we only didn't provide food, we also provide information, enlightening them on the situation. Because from our side, as a social worker, we propose, as I'm a social worker, I propose that some of these, they need to heal from these wounds. So the only situation that they can heal from is when they're actually in contact with their families, because they've never been in contact with their families since from the first day that they came to South Africa. So we are trying to make them actually in contact with their family. They can as well go as the legal side of it actually is being processed.
Yeah, that makes it very, very difficult. What are some of the other challenges that they're facing? And what about legal processes and so forth?
Oh, we are not actually providing the legal from our side, as you know, what we do as Gate of the Givers. But we are working with those that are actually providing the legal or side of it. And they're actually keen to keep on fighting for these miners.
It's certainly a terrible human cost and a tragedy in modern day times that is happened at the Aquarius mine in Kroondal. What would your advice be to companies in the future to prevent this kind of thing from happening?
From my side, I think it's a matter of companies engaging in real corporate social responsibilities. I think in that element, we don't really define what is social corporate responsibilities. We have the pitch of it, but when you really define it and when we educate companies to really actually engage in corporate responsibility, I think all these situations might actually be eradicated.
Well, it is a very concerning scenario, and it's good to see that Gift of the Givers have stepped in and are helping those remaining who are truly desperate. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.
From the Gift of the Givers, social worker Tapiwa Marima joined us talking about the dire situation that faced so many miners at the Aquarius mine in Kroondal here in South Africa. Now for our tweet of the day. This one comes from Steph Brennan. He says he's very pleased for the world of athletics that Usain Bolt won yesterday. Evidence that hard work, determination and talent always prevails. Yes, it was billed as the good against evil, doping against non-doping. Justin Gatlin, of course, served 2 doping bans, and he was painted very much as the villain in that picture. Now, let's take a look at what's on Newsroom's Facebook page. Trade and political relations between South Africa and Japan are to take center stage as Deputy President Cyril Ramaphosa, including ministers and business people, meet with officials in the capital, Tokyo, today. Then, Sudan appointed a new defense minister yesterday. The state news agency and a presidential source said 3 days after President Omar Hassan al-Bashir proposed a 2-month ceasefire with rebels fighting to overthrow his government. And protests against the Lebanese government turned violent for a second day yesterday, and Prime Minister Tamam Salam threatened to resign as public discontent brought thousands into the streets there. That's our Facebook page. You can just type in on Facebook SABC Newsroom in the search bar. We'll pop up like the page as always, and you'll get all the stuff on your page whenever anything happens in the world. Time for us to take a break now. This is Newsroom here on SABC News.
South Africa is the third leading country globally in TB infections.
We have 9 million new cases occurring globally, and 30% of those cases are occurring in the African region.
And there are two broad kinds of drug-resistant TB, so to speak. The one is MDR TB, and the other is XDR TB.
To ensure that everyone who's diagnosed with TB is tested for HIV.
There's grossly inadequate funding for TB. Vaccine, drug and diagnostic research. We need a lot more.
Join me on Health Talk every Saturday morning between 9 a.m. and 10 a.m. as we unpack current health stories.
Welcome back. You're watching Newsroom on SABC News. Let's take a look at the stories making headlines today. As a suspect will appear in court today following a major breakthrough in the recent spate of police killings in Gauteng, Parliament's Oversight Committee on Police says the killing of officers has reached intolerable proportions. The committee will discuss the SAPS strategy on preventing police killings this week. Trade and political relations between South Africa and Japan are in the spotlight today. This as officials from the two countries will meet in Tokyo. Deputy President Cyril Ramaphosa will be leading a delegation of ministers and business leaders. And Public Protector Thuli Madonsela is set to release her findings on the Passenger Rail Agency of South Africa today. Prasa has been facing many serious challenges, including allegations of corruption and mismanagement. And then news in this morning, the Department of Health has wished Dr. Aaron Motsoaledi a speedy recovery. It's been reported that the minister has been admitted to hospital for pneumonia. Well, remember, you can find all of those stories on our Newsroom Facebook page. Just search for SABC Newsroom. Of course, you can also follow us on Twitter at SABC Newsroom. Evan, back to you.
Thank you very much, Anina. It is estimated that more than 20 billion rand in retirements remain unclaimed, owing to about 3.5 million people that haven't been paid. A recent review by the Financial Services Board, the mining industry alone, is estimated that at least 5.2 billion is owed to around 200,000 people. The primary purpose of pension funds is to pay benefits to their members, and they must therefore find ways to trace and pay these beneficiaries. Retirement funds must take all reasonable steps to trace and pay their members and beneficiaries. Now, to talk to us about this, we are joined by Tagalani Lukaimani, who is Pensions Enforcement and Surveillance Manager at the Financial Services Board. Very good morning to you, Tagalani. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning, Eben. Thank you for having us on your show.
Before we start about the monies that are not being paid out, let's talk about the overall state of the pension industry, if we can talk about that, if we can name it that, in South Africa. How healthy are we?
We are very healthy. We have got very good governance procedures in place. We've got a very transparent industry that we have built up in terms of disclosure to members. We've also got very good investment managers in place, so members' monies are certainly growing. We've got a very good structure that has been around for a couple of years, so it's certainly matured quite well. And we're tightening up with very good governance policies as well that funds are implementing currently.
Now what are the reasons then that we see so much money not being paid out?
Well, members are not claiming their money. There's invalid or insufficient information that was provided either by the employer or take the mining story that you did earlier. Those members might not have any information on their pension fund because they don't even have documentation.
Yeah.
So trying to trace those kind of members would be extremely difficult on behalf of the fund. Even though they might have been receiving information on behalf of those members or contributions, they might now face a very difficult task in trying to trace those members as well. People didn't want to claim, you tell someone you only worked for 2 months or 3 months at a particular place, and your benefit is only 1,500 Rand. They felt it was too small and just figured, well, I'm going on to my next job. Why do I need to bother claiming the money? And the migrant labor, if they hadn't stayed, the gentleman that you spoke about before or that were being interviewed on before, they might have gone back already. They might have gone home in 2009.
Yeah.
And there it becomes even more difficult to trace them because not only did you not have documentation, but where you might have gone back to find them, they're no longer there. People didn't know which fund they belonged to. They didn't know whether they had a benefit or they didn't have a benefit. So all of those really did contribute. And also, our industry grew from 20 years ago. Lots of employers have now started providing pension funds as part of your employment. And the more the funds grew, the more there were people participating in the system that were not claiming their benefits. So over and above that, it really is a combination of a lot of issues that have contributed to this problem that we have now.
Let's go back to the mining industry quickly because the numbers are so big there. What's the plan? How do you arrest this situation within the mining sector?
Well, the funds that are involved are doing a lot of work to try and trace members. Bear in mind that because the industry has been around for such a long time, we're also now talking about not necessarily the members themselves, but also their beneficiaries. And for the beneficiaries to come forward, they also don't know which fund their father was contributing to, and in actual fact don't even know whether there was a pension fund available. But there's a lot of work that is happening between the funds and places like Teba Bank that might have the information to prove whether the person actually was employed in that industry. And from there on, they will try and trace the fund that they belong to and assist the person in trying to get a payment made from that fund as well.
Other than that, outside of mining and stuff, what happens to the unclaimed money? That money keeps on working then?
Yes, it does. It stays in the fund that it belongs to. Otherwise, it might be transferred to what we call an unclaimed benefit fund, which is a fund that houses unclaimed benefits only. And we have registered about 50 so far. And in those funds, there's already 4.6 billion that has been transferred by normal active funds or funds that were cancelling and only had unclaimed benefits left. They would have transferred their money there as well. So in respect of that, all of those monies are with the funds, with the respective funds, and they will accrue interest from the time that you would have left the benefit in the fund. And the funds will be trying to trace you either through the employer or through a tracing agent.
Now, the letter of the law says retirement funds must take all reasonable steps to trace and pay millions of their members and beneficiaries who remain untraced. That continues, and this process is ongoing?
It is ongoing. I think the fact that we are doing all the encouraging members to come forward is a sign that we are concerned about the fact that there are some members where traditional or conventional methods of trying to trace members by funds might not be appropriate. I think the example that I keep going back to about the story that you did earlier is the most appropriate. Most funds would use perhaps a credit check. If someone opened an account somewhere, they would be able to electronically trace whether you use your ID number. Those people would never be traced under those circumstances. So there is a drive to encourage funds to use, when you say reasonable, you must also use appropriate methods. It's not appropriate for a person in a rural area for you to use a newspaper, say, that is only circulated mostly in Gauteng. It doesn't assist you in trying to put adverts in places where the majority of the members would not be able to reach. So we're encouraging funds to try and look for non-conventional methods of trying to find people. You know, you go to places where industrial work was more prevalent, and you will find that the metal industry, for instance, they were more in Gauteng, but most of their members are in the east of Gauteng. So you know that, and you can then try and concentrate your efforts in that area rather.
Takalani, thank you very much for joining us. An interesting development. More than 20 billion South African rand lies unclaimed in pension funds here in South Africa. Now, interesting and quite a big story today. Trade and political relations between South Africa and Japan will take center stage when officials from the two countries meet in Tokyo a little bit later. Deputy President Cyril Ramaphosa is leading a delegation of ministers, business people to the world's third largest economy.
Trade between the two countries is currently in South Africa's favor, and Pretoria wants more investments while Japan also wants to increase its share.
We're going to be very busy in the next few days promoting South Africa and making sure that we promote trade and investment to come to South Africa.
South Africa is currently exporting mainly mineral products to Japan. These include precious stones and metals.
We are here to ensure that we are able to promote our agro-processing, ramp up our manufacturing, and support other critical industries that are of focus to South Africans, which are going to help us to grow our economy.
South Africa's economic growth as compared to Japan is relatively low, while unemployment is widespread. But with the emphasis more on agricultural products, much could be achieved. Japan produces 40% of its own food and imports the rest.
They are very good on fisheries, is one area that will be big. They've got vessels of very complicated fisheries, and doing fishing in the deep seas of South Africa is still very short, is one area that will be dealing matters around it.
With trade and political relations being the core of the visit, Deputy President Cyril Ramaphosa is expected to address the business forum, which will be attended by business from both South Africa and Japan. He's also expected to meet with the Prime Minister of Japan, Shinzo Abe. Lehana Tsotetsi, SABC News, Tokyo, Japan.
Now, the Public Protector, Thuli Madonsela, will release her findings on the Passenger Rail Agency of South Africa. That's Prasa, a little bit later today, actually at 11 o'clock on this channel. The parastatal has been facing various serious challenges, including allegation of corruption and mismanagement. The former CEO, Lucky Montana, was fired last month following a 3.5 billion rand tender contract for new diesel locomotives that allegedly did not conform to Southern African rail line standards. Don't forget, at 11 o'clock this morning, 11 a.m., that report will be live on this very channel, 404, brought to you by the lady in picture, Thuli Madonsela. Of course, yesterday Usain Bolt won the 100 meters gold at the World Athletics Championships in Beijing. Let's have a look at what you've been saying on social media about this. Is, of course, always causing a stir, this one. Justin Gatlin always gives Usain Bolt a run for his money. Two-time doper, mind you, Justin Gatlin. Luis Felipe Scolari says, at Usain Bolt delivers his greatest miracle in beating Justin Gatlin. Yes, for the first time he started as the underdog, really, after a terrible build-up to the World Champs, where he was injured for a couple of months. The biggest boss says, as long as you don't have the strides, you will never beat Usain Bolt. Yes, that was a fantastic performance. Rashid Umuni says Usain Bolt has described his IAAF World Championship 100-meter final victory over Justin Gatlin as the hardest race of his career. Yes, he's also said that he wishes now to carry on until Rio 2016 and remain undefeated in the 100 meters. Of course, he's still to run the 200 and 4x100 at the World Championships in Beijing, China this week. That's where we go. We wrap it now. Newsroom broadcast live from our studios here in Auckland Park, Johannesburg, every weekday morning between 9 and 10 a.m. Don't forget, we also stream live on YouTube at that time, with the health show is always available on demand on our YouTube channel. This is SABC News. You've been watching Newsroom, where we love it in the morning.